a go-to product for a few of our customers now, because am I right that this is a one component or a two component primer?
Yeah, that's it. If you need the isolating character of it, you can use it as a two component. So if it's going into high humidity areas where it's going to get or areas where it's going to get a lot of damage, then you use it as a two component. If it's going somewhere where it's not going to see so much damage, then use it as a one component. There are advantages of using these as a one component over a two component from an application point of view. Wet rooms on MDF, things like that, where you're really sealing it two component, it's exceptionally good, fills very well, easy to apply, fast drying and filling. It goes through all of our ranges. They dry at the right speed to allow you to finish the job very quickly. Being a sealer, it's very easy to sand as well, and if you're into it, this has IMO as well.
Yeah, just going back to that, our requirements that we spoke about in our introduction. So, everyone loves sanding. No. So I had a recent customer recently say they love this product because it is so easy to sand and it's so quick to sand. It's nice, quick drying product. And then of course we've got International Maritime Organization certification where it's required. So going over the top of that, top coating on top of isolating primer 360, what options have we got? So we've got a couple of tintable top coats, again with one with a one component, two component sort of variability. So can you tell us about that one, Clive? T450?
Yeah, 450 is a PU, acrylic PU. Again, like the primer underneath it, it can be used as a one pack or as a two pack whenever you need it. High opacity, so you don't have to put really thick layers on to get the coverage that you need, and it's tintable, so you can use your tinting machine to get it to the colors that the customers need. It's a very nice product. Cross-linkable, PU quality, good weathering resistance, good opacity, a range of gloss levels. The 460 is one component. It's got much more. It's more of an acrylic type of coating, tintable, fast drying, easy to apply, and that also comes in a range of products. I think it depends on where these are going to be used. If it's going to be high traffic, then you're going to need the two component. With all these things, you have to look at where they're going to be used, and if it's you specify the hardener where you need it. If you don't need it, then don't use it.
That's a T460, the one component. Really, it seems to stand out with some of our customers. They really like the way it's applied or goes down. It seems to pull out very, very flat. And of course, you've got so many gloss levels with that one as well to work through.
Absolutely, that's product's been used very, very widely. Again, similar to the 250 in this case. It was one that's been used to so people can move away from acid catalyzed products if they need to.
Clive, on a separate note, there's a couple of notes actually. I forget if you mentioned it, but I found that the when you add the hardener into these products, they go off slower than not having hardener, which sort of slightly baffles the brain. So, will your chemistry, will your background in chemistry help us with that one a little bit?
To some degree, yes. I'm afraid that is one of the issues. That hardener does have an aspect that needs to dry. So without the hardener, this is what I was saying about as a one component, it can be better than a two component, because you're right. As a one component, you put it on and it dries a lot quicker. If you put the cross linker in the second component, it does take longer to dry, but it dries much better, much tougher. You've really cross-linked it, and it becomes a very resistant material. But you're right. Yeah, it does take a bit longer to dry, to cross-link and dry.
Yeah, that's interesting. Just another thing, just as from the industry, we found quite often that people are actually fairly negative about some of the waterborne products that are out there. We find it struggle to get over. However, those people that do try them love them. But they're actually, it's almost like the industry's not quite ready for waterborne in some instances. Have you found the same in your travels around places?
It's a little bit regional. Some parts of the country are much more into water-based than others. The water-based technology has come a long way. I will say that. In the past, yeah, there were downsides with using water-based materials, but honestly, we've put so much investment, so much development into the right sort of binders to make these coatings that they would be my choice, really, because of the safety and because you can do things like, choose how much hardener to put in, wash your guns in water. There's no disadvantage, really. They may be considered as slightly slower in drying because you do have to move that water out. You've got to get rid of that water. It's like drying your washing. You've got to get rid of that water. But you've got to remember, these quite often they've got a higher solids content in compared to solvent based. So maybe one coat of this actually puts as much paint down as 2 coats of a solvent based. So it might take slower to dry, but it might be faster to build. So all these things need to be taken into account when you're choosing what sort of paint to use.
So do you think that some of the early generations of waterborne paint that people have used from, I don't know, some of our DIY stores and things like that, because they were very early generations, have created a bit of a bad rap for it in some instances? This is the feedback I sort of get. People seem to be negative and they think it's going to be rubbish, but when they do use it, they're quite surprised at actually how good it really is nowadays. Yeah,
you're right. It takes a little bit of convincing sometimes. But the quickest way is to try it, and you soon see. Follow the rules, follow the data sheets. We've got some comparisons. We could do quite a bit on this. We've got some comparisons where we've matched our solvent based and water based to get similar finishes, and you can barely tell the difference. And the speed with which you build them, they compete with each other. Well, yeah. Oh, it's a long way from old school emulsion paint that you put on your wall at home.
Sorry, Joe, I didn't mean to interrupt. Carry on.
That's fine. But we're about there, to be honest. I mean, we'll just go to Chris in a second, see if there's any questions on Aqualit or Colour. Just another point. Obviously, one hardener to use with that whole range we've just covered. So many products and just one hardener, nice and simple. And you guessed it, the thinner is water.
It is water.
Or there's a special optimizer.
There's an optimizer if you really struggle with drying, and it all depends on your drying conditions, your drying area, where you are in the country, how much the layer thickness you put on, what you're aiming for. You can put an optimizer in, which is an alcohol-based material, which will not slow it down as much as putting water in. Okay. But I think I've used it once. We're in the north, water's cheap, You
keep mentioning this regional thing, Clive. This is north-south divide. You're up in Blackburn. We're down here on the south coast, but I'm pleased to see you're still using the slow hardener. You're not having to go to the fast one yet. So
that's right. Yeah,
there's further north to go yet.
Yeah. Indeed. There are regional differences between people using PUs and acid cats and things like that. So that's where that comes from. But you're right. Yeah.
Okay. Well, before you guys get to a cultural argument, Chris, have we got any questions from anyone about Aqualit?
Yes, you briefly touched on it earlier. But how does the water-based deal with wetting out wood? And do you also get a lot of fluffing on MDF?
That's quite a perceptive question. When you put water-based coatings onto wood and on MDF, you can get grain raise and you can get fibre raising on MDF, and water-based products are often worse than solvent-based. It's one of those things. What I would say is a well-formulated water-based product that's designed to go on top of MDF will raise the fibres and raise the grain much less than a cheaper sort of standard one. So yeah, it's an issue, but our products are tuned to give much less fibre raising and grain raising compared to other ones out there. And again, I have to say, within our range, some are better than others. we supply paint into a number of different markets, but it's not something I'd be scared of. It's just something to be aware of, I suppose.
We found actually got asked that question fairly recently by a customer. Most of our customers, when they're using MDF, are using the green waterproof MDF, but there was a customer particularly using a fairly doing much lower cost items with a fairly cheap MDF, and the Aqualit primer actually did the job. And they tried plenty of water-based primers in the past that hadn't. It just turned the end of the MDF into a big fluff ball and started swelling it up. But actually, ours against the ones that they tried previously did the job and worked really well. But yeah, Chris, was that? I was just going back to your question. Was that also talking about the imagery of clear? How timber looks under water-based as well?
I don't think that's what they're getting at, but that is a good question. I certainly know from some of my experiences with it that the clears in the water-based can sometimes look a little bit less colourful.
Yeah, there's a couple of things. There's a couple of things on colour. I mentioned earlier the solvent-based coatings tend to warm up the wood a little bit. Some people like it. Some people think it looks a bit old-fashioned. Solvent-based coatings are very clear. In the past, water-based coatings have also often been cloudy and slightly milky. That's not the case with these. With our Aqualit clear products, they are really, really clear. The image that you get of the wood underneath isn't distorted. They're very good, but they don't warm up the wood the same as the solvent-based ones. There are a few tricks of the trade which we can employ if you want to mimic a solvent-based look with a water-based coating. So there are things that can be done like that, but a lot of people are now preferring the look of water-based. Like I said earlier, the more contemporary look, more modern, cooler, trendier look to it compared to, an old church, something like that.
That's Quantum and Aqualit, but AkzoNobel are a massive company, and you've got a much wider array of technologies at your disposal. Could you just let us know briefly about some of them?
Yeah, that's a page from one of our websites. If you're in interior products, you need quite a range of coatings to supply the market. We specialize in the PU acrylics, which we've talked about today. We specialize in water-based products, which we've talked about today. We still sell the acid cured or acid catalyzed materials, which are on the top right of that. And we have a particularly special product within that range. It's our formaldehyde-free acid catalyzed system. So acid cats often give out formaldehyde, which it's not good for you. It's not healthy, and it makes your eyes water, smells horrible. We have an FF. All the performance of acid catalyzed looks like an acid catalyzed, but it doesn't smell like it because it doesn't make your eyes water. So we've got our FF technology, acid cat. PU acrylics we've talked about, the water-based we've talked about. Within the PU acrylics, there's the bottom two there, a specialty sealer and a specialty clear. This is our Speed product, which is a unique product. It's solvent containing, although it's a very low level of solvent. It's not water-based. It's spray applied. It's got PU performance, but it cures using handheld UV lights or handheld UV LEDs. So you can spray it and you can cure it almost instantaneously. You're sanding within minutes. You're building up layers within minutes. You can fully finish panels much more quickly compared to PUs. There are rules you have to follow. With all of these are serious professional paints. But that's a really nice product. We could do a whole session on FF and Speed because they're unique.
Yeah, really I've had a bit of experience with Speed, and I think that could be one on the cards for the future. Chris, I'm just going to cut back to you before we get ready to finish. Have you got any more questions that we need to answer?
Yeah, the last one that's just come in. Can the systems be used together so you can use Quantum in the factory and then Aqualit on site to during the install to reduce any sort of smell problems? And actually also just on what you touched there, the Speed and Quantum to accelerate the process?
That's a good question. In principle, this is one of the beauties of coming to like a one-stop shop for the paint. We know all the paints, we know how they work with each other. So our systems are designed so that you can mix the layers. You can't mix the paints, but you can mix the layers. You need to follow the rules. The paints need to be in the right condition before you can overcoat a water base with a solvent based, or a solvent base with a water based, or UV on top of a water based pigmented. But providing you follow the rules on the data sheets, if you're in any doubt, speak to guys at Marineware or guys at Akzo. We can advise you. Sometimes you need to follow sanding. There needs to be specific times between coating, but in principle, all of these can be coated on top of each other, providing you follow those. And I've done it, so I know it works.
Good. Anything else, Chris?
No, that's it. I think you guys have covered everything now.
Good. Well.